Welcome to another edition of We Need to Talk About Movies. Brought to you by banterflix.com. And now, here's your host, Jim McClean.
Hello. Yes, I am indeed your host, Jim McClean. Welcome to the latest episode of We Need to Talk About Movies, a film review podcast brought to you by the Banterflix movie review website. Cinematic discussion with a Northern Irish accent. We're back with another episode. If this is your first time checking out the pod, then welcome to the madness. Hopefully you'll enjoy the experience, and if you do, you'll remember to subscribe to make sure you never miss a single episode. And you might even want to check out our website, www.banterflix.com, where you can find the complete back catalogue of all our previous podcasts, including not just We Need to Talk About Movies, but Crime Scene to Screen, Talking Cosplay, and all our spoiler specials. Loads. We've done loads of podcasts over the years. If, however, you have been listening to us for a while, then thank you for continuing to tune in. You're obviously enjoying the pod, so thank you for continuing to listen. You might even be one of our Patreons who help make this all happen, so thank you very much. If you're not one of our patrons and you want to find out more, again, check out our website where you'll find more details on that and ways that you can help financially support us. And every penny goes towards making this podcast possible, but that is enough of me trying to once again sell our wares. Let's get into this week's show. We have a packed show as always. Once again, we are recording via Zoom, so apologies in advance. There is the odd little technical glitch throughout the recordings. Don't think it happens too much this week, but we just want to let you know we do look forward to being able to get the team back into the studio again and chat in a room about movies, but we're just not there yet, listeners. The infection rates in Northern Ireland are still quite high, the pandemic's still going on, and as we hope it doesn't lead to another lockdown and closure of cinemas, we will not pull on that thread right now. Safety first, and we're just recording via Zoom, so hopefully it doesn't interfere with your enjoyment too much of the pod, but hopefully you'll enjoy this week's show. As I'm joined by Joe McElroy and Victoria Brown, we're going to be talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. The trailer dropped for that last week, and it's fair to say I'm a little bit excited about it, and you've that to look forward to, me geeking out. I know I'm nearly 40, but I'm allowed to geek out once in a blue moon. You can also hear me talk with Irish filmmaker Cathy Brady about her feature debut Wildfire. That's out in cinemas now. And we'll wrap up this week's show by talking about Nia DaCosta's Candyman, like Wildfire. It's out in cinemas now, but it's going to make interesting listening because not all of us are in agreement on our thoughts towards the film, so you've that to look forward to. Yeah, so it's a packed show. It's a lot of fun as always. Thank you once again for tuning in. That's enough of me rambling on. Let's get stuck into this week's show and let's have a listen at the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home.
The entire world is about to forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Wait, everyone? Can't some people still know?
That's not how the spell works.
So MJ's gonna forget about everything we've ever been through?
Stop tampering with the spell.
Oh my god, Ned, he's my best friend. Oh, my Aunt May should really know.
Stop talking!
What just happened?
So that's a clip of Spider-Man No Way Home, and now I'm joined by the lovely Victoria Brown. Hello, Victoria.
Good evening.
And Joe McElroy.
Good evening, everyone.
So, guys, we're going to kick off. The last time we were recording, we were just talking about the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer literally leaking, and then we said, oh, by the time this podcast is out, they'll have probably released it. And they did. They had released it. By the time we had woke up all the next morning, it was out and everybody was very excited about it. I am definitely one of those people because just two words has got my spider geek sense tingling. Hello, Peter. I can't do an Alfred Molina, but hello, Peter. And it's just I always talk about that instant feedback. Back to Spider-Man 2. I'm not quite sure what year it was released. For me, still one of my favourite Spider-Man movies of all time. It's probably one of my favourite comic book movies, up there with even Superman 2, the Donner cut. Victoria, I'll come to you first, because the last time I had you on, you were talking about Loki, and you were a bit meh about Loki. You weren't that excited about what it has set up with the concept of the multiverse. It's laid the foundations for pretty much stuff like this. Spider-Man, No Way Home, we are seeing the multiverse go full flow in the MCU. What did you think?
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't even watched the bloody thing. I'm not a Spider-Man fan.
Oh my god,
As
how can we be
the light in
friends?
Jim's eyes dies.
Ooh.
I know. Like, I love Tom Holland, and the memes have been like amazing, but like I wasn't excited at all.
You need the context now. Context for the memes.
Yeah.
I know that like Tom Holland, especially at like panels and stuff, had to be like pre-warned not to give away any spoilers. So a lot of the memes were like, there's a Simpsons one where it's Marge going, "Tom, no," and then him going, "I didn't do anything," and her going, "Oh, sorry, force of habit."
Oh, poor old Tom. I do love the fact that I think was it the last one, they told him a lot of lies of stuff that wasn't really happening, just to kind of see if all the lies would come out. I think I remember reading that somewhere, or they told him untruths. Poor old Tom. Poor old Tom.
He's a young lad.
But
Yes.
so you like the Tom Holland Spider-Man, but I mean, have you any love at all for the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies?
I do like the original Spider-Mans, like the three Tobey Maguire ones, because I think Sam Raimi he suits that kind of aesthetic perfectly. Like, I do really like Spider-Man 2, but I haven't seen the Andrew Garfield ones because I just had no interest.
You're not missing too much, but I actually think Andrew Garfield's a really good Spider-Man. I think he was really well cast at the time. Joe's clearly disagreeing with me. So at this point, Victoria Brown, whose opinion I will no longer ever kind of hold in any sense of validation of anything since she doesn't like Spider-Man, you're disagreeing with me on Andrew Garfield. I think he's a good Spider-Man. I just think Sony didn't know what they wanted to do. They rebooted when they probably didn't really need to reboot, and then they were too busy trying to set up their own little Sony Marvel universe with the Sinister Six, which we're definitely going to get strong hints of within this movie. I think they are getting their wish with the Sinister Six, but basically piggybacking on Marvel's Phase 4 plans. But you clearly weren't fussed on poor old Andrew.
Well, it's not Andrew's fault as such. It's just those two films just left such a bad taste in my mouth. I was like, I just don't want anything associated with them ever again. They're just, well, the first one was relatively all right. Now, we had a bit of hope for the second one, going, okay, they'll take note of what was wrong with that first one and then they'll improve on it. But they did the polar opposite. They just did everything that was wrong worse, and they made it longer, and they added more villains, and they added just so much more stuff. And you're like, you don't need to do this. You're missing out on the fundamentals. And then for some reason, Gwen Stacy's dad is a ghost who's constantly haunting Peter, going, "Here, you stay away from my daughter." And it's just I don't like either of those films. But I very much like the first two of the Raimi ones. The third one, not so much.
I have a little soft spot for Spider-Man 3 up until the climax, up until the finale, when it just basically just throws everything bar the kitchen sink. Probably the kitchen sink gets thrown in there as well, and it's a mess. And what I remember from Spider-Man 3, the thing I hated the most about it, and it's not even the dance, dancing sequence with Tobey Maguire. I quite like that for all its silliness, but there's the sequence in the finale when all hell is kicking loose between Sandman, Venom. I'm not quite sure what we call James Franco's variation of the Goblin. I can't remember what it was.
Hobgoblin or something like that, because isn't that what it is in the comic books? It's like he's the Hobgoblin. I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a long time. Not
really, and he's kind of a variation of the Green Goblin. But that sequence is going on, and during it just keeps cutting back to this news reporter, and it annoyed the fuck clean out of me during that sequence, and it's just felt like someone who had handled like either in the DOP or the edit didn't know what they wanted to do with the action sequence, probably because it was too CGI heavy, so they just kept cutting away from it, and it annoyed the hell out of me. I will say this in defense, and anytime I say this, I always get some fucker, right? And thank you for listening, but whoever you are, that one fucker who then picks up the one thing that I say and twists it all out of context and makes it sound like I think the second Andrew Garfield Spider-Man film is a masterpiece. It's not. It's flawed as hell. But I will say this from someone who loved the comic books when I was growing up. The sequence where they do that iconic event, that iconic moment with Gwen Stacy. Well, it's not a spoiler. The death of Gwen Stacy in the comics is just iconic, and that cover. I mean, I don't have it here. I have it in my house, in my mum's house. I have that on a big wall somewhere, and there's sequences in that part of the film are just lifted from the comic book, and they're just perfect. I know that it's flawed, and Jamie Foxx's Electro's pretty terrible, but they tried to do a kind of a villain who wasn't really a villain. But as flawed as it is, I didn't mind Andrew Garfield. I don't know what to believe. The talk is that we're going to see all three Spider-Men in this new film. I don't know if they are keeping their cards close to the chest. They're doing it pretty well. Well, they're either doing it really well or they're doing it really badly. I don't know. But, Joe, have you at least... Because I should have maybe mentioned before we started to record that I was going to talk about this. Maybe Victoria might have watched the trailer. Maybe we should just make her watch it now. But then, because she's not seen any other films other than the original Raimi ones, she might have no emotional engagement at all. But have you seen the new trailer?
Yeah, I've seen it. And, it's well, out of, prior to it, I didn't really have much of an interest in it. But I'm not sure about the de-aging of Alfred Molina in it. He looks more like Yoko Ono than he does of his 2004 self. It's just really weird. It's like he's no neck either or anything like that there. But I do understand at the same time the significance of it and all for fans and that there. Part of me kind of thinks, well, just leave that with the Raimi side of things, and you leave the Mark Webb stuff with the Mark Webb stuff and just let Tom Holland's Spider-Man be his own thing. But at the same time, it's an important sort of tool that's been implemented through Loki, like we mentioned in our previous podcast, that the multiverse is in action now. And it's funny because everyone thought prior to this, with Wanda starting to mess with it a bit, and then, like I said, Loki's messing with it a bit, that Strange is going to be like the sort of janitor having to clean it all up, going, "Oh, are you serious? Look at the mess you've left." But no, he's like, "Nah, fuck it, I'm going to mess about with it too." Because like the whole idea is he's trying to erase the idea that everyone knows that who Peter Parker is Spider-Man, based on the events of the last film. So I probably will go to see it because I'm intrigued to see how it'll all play out and how it'll play into the grand picture of the multiverse, because that's the kind of idea that I do like, but sort of cautious optimism.
I am going to be there with bells on and probably severely disappointed when it turns out they've done another WandaVision. They've pulled the rug out from under us. They thought they were going to set up the multiverse, introduce the Fox characters into the MCU, and then it's not. It's all just a coincidence, you sneaky bastards, Marvel. But I don't know. There's just something, I mean, there's all the things that are being hinted at, and I'm staying away from Easter eggs. I really am, because you can go on Google and you can search everything. There's the Alfred Molina one, it's clear as day. There's a very unsubtle reference to William Dafoe's Green Goblin, the most underrated, campiest villain that there has ever been, and I think William Dafoe's Green Goblin needs a bit more love. And we've also got the rumours that we're going to see Daredevil back. I mean, I love Daredevil. I refuse to this day to what. Here's the thing. The first thing I will do once I have seen Spider-Man No Way Home, I can then go home and watch the last episode of Daredevil, because then it's not over. It's not over, guys, because
somewhere.
Because I can't bring myself to watch the last episode of Daredevil to know that it's over. It might be terrible. It might be the best episodes of Daredevil we've ever seen. I'm not going to watch it because if I do, I have the moment I do, then we know that Charlie Cox isn't going to be Daredevil anymore. You're just kind of going like, well, what's the point? Because he's perfectly cast. I love Daredevil on Netflix. I fucking loved that series. I think it was flawed with season 2. I think season 3 is just a return to form, and I just can't bring myself to watch that last episode. But if he's back, even if it's just for this kind of one-off kind of, I don't know. If he is, I can go home and I can finally finish Daredevil and know that I can live in hope that there might just be another outing for Charlie Cox as Daredevil. I don't know. That's me just being a fanboy. I don't know. Phil, I don't know where you can pick up on that. Victoria, I'll come back to you. I mean, I know we kind of touched on this the last time, but does the concept of the multiverse excite you at all? I mean, are you really kind of into the Marvel MCU stuff?
Not as much as I thought I would be. Like 5 years ago, I was completely on board, but now I've kind of not so much lost my love for it, but lost my enthusiasm for it. Like I'll still go and watch a lot of them, and I do appreciate what they're doing. Like when we went to see Candyman, the trailer for The Ten Rings.
Oh, Shang-Chi.
Yeah, I was actually surprised at how good that looks. I'm quite excited for that. But yeah, it's one of those things. I'll probably watch it, but I'm not that excited, which disappoints myself.
That's okay. You've no reason to be disappointed. You know, I remember asking Aaron Flanagan, I can't remember why. I think it might have been WandaVision when we were talking about this. We did a kind of WandaVision comic book 101. We need to go back and do those because they were great. You were able to go back and look at the comic book originals and kind of look at some of the stories to look out for if you like the films. And I always loved Aaron's kind of reason why he loved the multiverse, because it's just this get out of jail card that someone invented that, you know, if something can't be explained and you really can't be arsed trying to explain it too much, you go, it's multiverse. That's it. It's multiverse. Why can Loki be a crocodile? Well, it's the multiverse. Sorry. I'm sorry if that's a slight spoiler. You know, why can't he? But it's multiverse. Why can't this happen? Why can't that happen? Or what's the rules? Multiverse. And yeah, I'm excited. I remember when I read the comics and it started to get into the multiverse, it did lose me, I have to be honest, because it started to get really complicated, and you can already to an extent see that. And I've touched on this before. I'm the person that's talked about having comic book fatigue, maybe a bit like Victoria. Mine's came and went, and it's not that I'm back, you know, with massive enthusiasm for comic book movies and the MCU. I'll be honest, there's just that little bit of nostalgia with Alfred Molina involved in Spider-Man 2 that has probably pulled me like Donnie Brasco. Just when I thought they could pull me out, they pulled me right back in. And that's my terrible Al Pacino impression. But that's I mean, there's no getting away from it. That's what it has done. I mean, this one film, it's there for people who love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films to go, come on back. You don't think the Marvel movies are for you? Of course they are. And yeah, I'm intrigued by the multiverse. I do have a worry, though, that I think as it goes on, because Marvel have been really good at this, you know, and kind of planning everything out, I think it could get too complicated, that it does mean you have to watch too much. Like, you kind of need to have watched, you probably won't, and you will at the same time. It's the multiverse. But the fact that it'll help if you've watched WandaVision, it'll help if you've watched Loki, suppose it'll help if you've watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but, you know, somebody has to. I don't know, Joe, you know, your thoughts? I mean, I know we want to move on and talk a few other things, and we want to talk, I know I'm going to be interviewing Cathy Brady about Wildfire, a locally produced film that's out in cinemas here in Ireland this weekend. But are you excited about that concept going forward? Are you still as enthusiastic about the MCU as you would have been a few years ago?
Not really, to be honest with you, because, well, the thing with the, you know, the sort of the last phase, you know, what was it, phase 4? Like, it was all building to Infinity War, so you had this 10-year wait to that. And now they're just revamping and starting the same thing again, only with the multiverse. So you're starting to think in your head, right, how many years am I going to commit for this big story payoff then? So at the same time, it's going to take a lot to get me really intrigued and really interested in it at the same time. Like Black Widow wasn't the best of starts for it, I suppose, because it was just an all right sort of, espionage sort of thriller within Marvel. And then Shang-Chi, it looked relatively interesting, based on the trailer before Candyman there. And then Spider-Man, I'm kind of like, okay, well, it is sort of going into the multiverse stuff now. And then, Sam Raimi coming back to Marvel with Doctor Strange 2, stuff like that's getting me interested. But at the same time, like, there's a bit of exhaustion along with that. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm leaning more towards DC these days, to be honest with you, because you look at something like Suicide Squad, that's like a one and done thing. Maybe they'll go back to it. Maybe they'll just follow one character or something like that there, like they're doing with Peacemaker. He's getting his own show on HBO Max. So I think they're, in the weird sort of way, they're getting it right now. So it's like, okay, if you like this, here's it one-off, great. It's packaged for you. If it does well enough, that character alone will get a sequel. We're not going to build towards any big major thing. It's just going to be, we'll follow that character through a sequel and that. So in the grand scheme of things, like it'll depend on the actual plot and story and sort of directors linked and connected with the films that will sort of draw me in. But in the grand, like I said, in the grand scheme of things, there is a bit of exhaustion that's sort of well set in now.
All right, Joe, just because you want more Snyderverse shite anymore.
No, I just want more violence.
Okay. Yeah, everybody wants violence. Okay, so I think we'll move on. Earlier this week, I caught up with award-winning filmmaker Cathy Brady via Zoom, because that's how we do everything these days, to talk about her new film Wildfire. It's just been released in cinemas, and it stars the late Nika McGuigan. And before you hear my interview with Cathy, let's play a clip of Wildfire.
Can I buy you ladies a drink each?
Yeah?
You want something stronger?
No.
Sure.
Yeah.
You twins?
No. Guess who's older, me or her? Bet you're older the size of that belly on you.
Hey, hold on. That's all muscle, love.
Here, muscle man, see if you can do this. Watch. Oh, no, my legs.
Yeah! You can't be doing that in here, girls.
Why not? What hurts you doing?
Cut it out or get out.
Sure, they've done far worse and you still serve them.
Yeah, far worse.
You should go on now, girls.
We're not going anywhere. We haven't done anything wrong.
Someone shut that fucking hanging up. You don't know who you're dealing with, wee girl.
Yeah, I do. 12th of July, 92. Busy day for you, wasn't it, Cherry? My ma told me what you did. Our dad was one of the 26 your bomb killed. She doesn't even remember him. And you lot got early release to keep the peace.
You might be a free man, Jerry, but you're still a murderer.
Mama!
You don't scare me, mister.
Do a
What are you gonna do, huh? What are you gonna do, huh?
Get those fuckers out of here now! That's it, girls. Bye-bye. Get the fuck! Bye-bye, girls.
So that's a clip of Wildfire, which is hitting cinemas on the 3rd of September. And I'm joined now by the film's award-winning director and writer, Cathy Brady. Hello to you, Cathy.
Hello, Jim. How you doing?
Cathy, I'm good. Excuse my squeaky chair. There's just nothing I can do about that. But as we were just about to record, you had a lovely pigeon that was serenading you. So hopefully that will not return, and hopefully the squeaky chair that I have will not prove too much of a hindrance. But we're here not to talk about my squeaky chair. We're here to talk about your film. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners as much as you want them to know about Wildfire?
Well, Wildfire it's a story about one sister who has been missing and returns home. And when she returns home, she begins to unearth the family's history. And it's really about a relationship between two sisters. And the other sister has to realize, in order to to keep her sister, she has to go on that journey of discovering the truth about the family's past. It's set in Borderland, Northern Ireland, and it's very much a sibling story, and it's about the strength of family bonds.
Yeah, there's a lot of themes in there. You've touched on quite a few of them there. We look at the trauma of the past. The border is definitely there. The legacy of conflicts here. So can I ask, from a creative point of view, where was the the origin. Where did the origin come from this, and then where did you pull in that creative thread to kind of get to the finished feature that we see on screen?
Well, unlike most films, this film started with the casting first. So I cast it before I even had a script or even as much of an idea. And it was having worked with Nora Jane and Nika separately, I was really blown away by their ability to be incredibly courageously vulnerable and fierce. And I just wanted to tell a story with them at the heart of it. And the three of us wanted to tell a story about fierce women. And I'd come across a documentary about 10 years ago called Madness in the Fast Lane. And in this documentary, it follows twin sisters who have a shared psychosis. And the documentary footage finds them on the M6 in England, and they've just thrown themselves into oncoming traffic and survived with remarkable fury. And that footage really troubled me. And I wanted to understand how could two sisters be so bonded that event could happen. And that really began the journey of Wildfire. So we worked with a researcher, we spoke to psychiatrists, psychologists, we even spoke to two sisters who had a shared psychosis. And through that, we realized how much trauma was a part of that psychosis. Me being from borderland Northern Ireland, it made sense to fictionalize that story and bring it home. So set it in borderland Northern Ireland, you didn't have to look too far before you realize there's a legacy of pain and hurt and trauma within these communities and within these families that's still healing. And, you had the work of Lyra McKee that was really beginning to shed a light on the ceasefire generation.
Yeah, you mentioned there, just an absolutely fantastic writer and journalist, and it's it is a shame that she's no longer with us. I mean, she was someone I had the pleasure of meeting a few times, and it's hard to think that Lyra's not here. I do want to go back and ask me, how did you find that from a writing point of view of kind of doing things reverse? Kind of normally it's kind of the idea comes first. And then, usually the idea comes first and then the casting. So you were working with people you wanted to work with. So from a creative point of view and formulating the feature, how did you find that from a writing point of view of research, having your cast in mind before you had kind of the narrative, I suppose, doing your research? What was your process, I suppose, is the better way of kind of putting now those ideas and your casting ideas into the screenplay for Wildfire?
It's a very back and forth process. So for example, with, what we were finding in terms of our research interviews, like for example, with trauma, we were understanding sometimes trauma has been not really assimilated and had a chance to heal. So it's passed down from one generation to the next. So then we realized, wow, the mother's backstory is incredibly crucial to the girl's present. Equally, what has happened in the community 20 years is equally as important as what's happening right now. So fact was informing the fiction we needed to start to build. And then what we started to gather in terms of fiction, then we were trying to cross-reference that with fiction and with fact. And we were kind of going, is the fiction that we're building authentic? Is it truthful? So it was this very rigorous process which allowed the film to be very much character-led rather than plot and here's your scenario. So I do think the film genuinely feels different because it's made differently. And I think that is one of the reasons why the performances are incredibly powerful at the center of this, because the two lead actresses really feel like sisters. And it was because we began with their physicality first. We didn't have script to work with. So, one of the very first things I did was we used music as a way to start to build a sense of atmosphere, energy, dynamics. And, one of the first exercises we did was to use music. And I asked the girls to sort of just move to Patti Smith's song Horses. And it's an incredibly visceral 9-minute track. And it was powerful because in that I got to see all the range and dynamic and the sheer force of these two actors who were willing to go to really raw and quite primal places. And what is even more remarkable is a lot of what happened on that very first workshop 5 years ago ends up in a scene in the film, in the bar. And I think that just is a real testament to building films in a different way.
Was this type of process something you'd done before on any of your previous work? And is it something as you move on to further projects with your career, do you see yourself kind of keeping that structure, or do you think, I suppose it depends project to project, I suppose?
I have. I did a short film called Morning, and I built the world and the characters separately from. So I worked with Johnny Harris and Eileen Walsh, and I built their characters separately with them. And then they met on screen for the first time, and we filmed that over 4 days. And it was one of those films I said to everybody, like, this might not work as a film. And it actually gave us such freedom. And the film went on to be nominated for a European Academy Award. And it was because of that, Carlo Crestodina had approached me, who ended up producing Wildfire. So it is incredible about, just trying things different. And when they do work, it just, it begins a pathway to a new way of working. And I think, seeing the strength of Wildfire and the performances and the relationship I got to build with those two amazing actresses over 5 years, like, that's something that I couldn't nurture by myself, sitting writing a script solo for 5 years. So I really appreciate that collaboration. And I guess the next thing is, how can I protect that when I'm starting to work with, a more established cast, a bigger budget? So I might not have that sheer free reign that I had with Wildfire, but I really hope to allow space for actors to be creators in terms of how I build character.
And you're talking about your two central ladies in this feature. We have Nika and we have Nora. I'm sure this is still kind of a tad raw for yourself, but this film, since this film's release, I think it was in post. Sadly, Nika passed away in 2019. What are your memories? Because you'd said you'd worked with her before. I mean, what are your memories of working with her?
Well, I worked firstly with Nika on a lyric theatre table read. And she came in, and over the space of a weekend, she had to read 2 different plays, to play 2 completely different characters. And it was just a table read, but I was blown away. I was like, who is this woman? Like, she just had presence, And, just actually, we ended up working again together on Can't Cope, Won't Cope, RTE TV series. But she went through quite a rigorous casting process to get that. But that, she was just someone who was vividly present, and, she was a kind of an all or nothing person. When she gave you her attention, she gave you everything, and that's very precious. And, we became very good friends, and I kind of feel like she changed me, she made me a better person. Nika always wore her heart on her sleeve, and, it's such a brave thing to do. And, I hope I do that as well.
She's absolutely tremendous in this, and like yourself, I think, if I'm correct, I think her performance was posthumously awarded at the IFTAs, if I'm correct in that, as were yourself. And how have you found the film's journey on the festival circuit? We have had the rather small matter of a pandemic during that. I mean, I know the film's played Toronto. It was at London where I first saw Wildfire digitally. Sitting where I am now, I was able to catch it. But how have you found that festival journey and that experience kind of for a first-time feature during a pandemic?
We finished the film in the February 2020. And I felt like I had climbed a mountain, just finishing the film without Nika. And then obviously COVID happened in the March. So I felt like the film was going to go into the deep freeze. And in many ways, I didn't quite have the energy to carry on with the film in terms of promoting it. I actually just needed time to grieve. So in a very strange way, COVID allowed me the opportunity just to sit and take stock of what had just happened. So here we are, we're close to another year since the film's gone out, because it first released in September 2020, and we're about to release it into cinemas and meet the public with it. And I think I feel like I'm in a much better place to hold space for the film and to celebrate it. Because as hard as this journey has been, it's been one of the most precious things that I've ever done in my life. And I've made such amazing connections, and especially with Nika. So of course, it's for this film to be buried and to stay in the deep freeze would have been a real tragedy. So, I'm really excited about what happens next. And obviously I'm always going to be mindful that there's always that empty seat. There's always that person who isn't with us. But at the same time, too, I know that she would want us to be shouting about this film from the rooftop. And I guess that's the real next step of this film, is when it meets its audience, have we done everything we can with this film? Is it touching the same nerve it touched with ourselves? Is it able to connect with other people? And I guess that's the next test.
Listening to what you say, I can fully understand. I mean, I lost my father earlier this year, and grief is a horrible thing. Grief is a thing where you really do need that time to kind of just sit and reflect and be allowed to kind of bring yourself back into the world. I know that sounds a little bit OTT, but you do need that time and that space to clear your head. So I suppose, in a way, as you've alluded to, Cathy, the pandemic has, as you said, has kind of give you that time, to allow you that time to grieve for a friend and a colleague, and now, being able to kind of get out and discuss the film. I completely get that. It is a powerful it is powerful, and I know I'm kind of going off on a slight tangent when I mention that, but I guess it must be tough now, kind of, as you've mentioned, you being out now on the promotional tour without someone who's such a close friend to yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, grief is a grief that is close. It's something that you don't really know what it feels like until you're in it. And the thing about Wildfire, it is a film that in a way deals with grief. And there I was in the middle of post, dealing with the biggest grief in my life. And in a way, everything that the character was telling me in my relationship with Nika was about, you have to kind of go there with it. You have to go there with these uncomfortable feelings, because the other side of grief is love. And, that's the power, that's the power. You hurt because you love someone that much. And, I think these characters go on such a journey, and they kind of reconnect through their own grief and through each other through that. So I feel like, this film is all about embracing the messy emotions. And I think in this film, you see characters who behave in ways that often female characters aren't allowed the space to.
That's a very interesting point you make. There is some things I do want to kind of come back to. And I mean, I did want to ask you, kind of, in the process of your research for the film, did you come in with your kind of, I know kind of now we're looking at things slightly different, but did you come in with your preconceptions when you were doing the research for this project? Kind of, did you come in with any preconceptions on kind of the effect of trauma and grief, and kind of in the process of your research and your interviews, did you find that challenged in any way?
I think and I don't want to speak on behalf of Nika and Nora Jane, but their own experiences of mental health and suicide within their families was incredibly close. So there was a real personal chord with both Nika and Nora Jane that felt like there wasn't space to preconceive, because it was already too close to home in terms of their reference points. And I think when we spoke to the two sisters who had a shared psychosis, what really surprised me was the nuance and the detail of what living inside a psychosis feels like. And one of the stories being that one of the sisters, she realized that she was walking home one night and she heard this noise, and when she looked around, it was a wolf, and she was terrified, so she kept running and running. And when she got home and she finally put the key in the door and she looked around, the wolf was gone. And I said to her, like, she's on the other side, she's medicated, she's kind of, she's gone through a transformative crisis, she believes, and she feels like she's in a much better place, and yet she still can't explain why that happened or how that happened. And it just made me go, sometimes with stories we tidy up everything, this happens because that happens. So I realized there needed to be space for messiness in the film, and that was the big takeaway for me, to allow these characters to, if they're going to feel lived in, they have to be messy, and not everything can be explained away. But that's difficult, because story and plot, we're so used to seeing a particular formula.
Yeah, not everything has to be resolved by the end, or if you're David Lynch, not everything has to be told in a linear sense that even possibly makes sense for some. But I do want to kind of come back generally to the film, and one of the things I'd mentioned just before we started to record was I was really taken by the film's visuals. And we have Crystal Fournier. I hope I am getting her surname right, but she's a DOP I've been impressed with. She worked on Girlhood, which is a film I absolutely loved. That was out a few years ago. Can you just tell me a little bit about your relationship with her? And I know you'd mentioned just before the interview that looking for a female DOP was something that was a very active part for your hunt for the feature. Was something you definitely considered for the feature?
Yeah, and it was also because I wanted the female gaze, a sense of looking and in a very earnest, honest way. And I just kind of felt like I wonder what a female DOP could offer in terms of that insight and that proximity to another female actress, that when they're not feeling looked at in a certain way, what would happen? But also I was really curious about the idea of an outside perspective, someone who's not from Ireland or the UK. What does an outside eye look like? And was very interesting, speaking to Christelle, like right from the get-go, from the very first conversations. The thing that sparked the connection for me was her nuance of the characters' relationships, her understanding of the subtext. And so I kind of wanted to have visuals that would be not like bleak realism, but something quite poetic about it, without ever feeling the force of the filmmaker. Because for me, the performances always had to be right at the front of this film. It wasn't about showing off camera technique or visuals, but I knew we still had quite big set pieces within this film. Like we had to shut down a motorway, we had stunts, we had cars, we opened on the middle of the Irish Sea. How do you shoot that? We had a whole big fire sequence. We had to set a field on fire. How do you do that? And so I knew I was out of my depth, and I knew I needed someone very experienced. And what I loved, especially about Girlhood, is Crystal never got in the way of the performance, yet she danced around the performance, and every so often you'd go, oh, isn't that a beautiful shot? But you weren't being, it was so subtle and so nuanced that like, it felt she was a really good choice, and then her understanding of the script. So when it came to actually really finding the language together, it was a lot of detailed conversations in advance. We had many Zoom conversations. Well, it would have been Skype because Zoom wasn't a thing then. And many Skype conversations. And we pretty much shortlisted every single scene within the film and storyboarded our key sequences.
I was kind of thinking when you come in with big set pieces, and I was just kind of interested in kind of what you were talking about earlier on in the interview about the process, because normally the idea is kind of storyboarding and what you want and kind of that relationship with the DOP. And then when it comes to the day of filming, then how quickly kind of what you had in your head or what your DOP is suggesting for you, how quickly that has to change and to adapt. I mean, how did you find that process? I know you've alluded to it there, but that process off some of the bigger set pieces, without going into spoilers, but from what you maybe had in your head from those storyboards to what we finally see on screen. How did you find that process, and what were the challenges, I guess?
I don't think that, they didn't steer, especially the big set pieces, because the gear, the crew, the SFX, any kind of complications, they all had to be worked out in advance. So we would have done recce's at the location. So a lot of that stuff, what we kind of agreed on the storyboard was captured on set. If there was slight adjustments in certain scenes, there might have been more drama two-handers or ensemble dramas, like that we, in terms of coverage of what might be the most efficient or what's actually the better point of view of the scene. But a lot of the more complicated stuff, we did kind of settle those choices much earlier. And I guess because although we had a decent budget for a debut, it was still very tight in terms of schedule. We'd only 6 weeks and a bit to shoot this, and we were traveling, we shot all over Ireland. We shot Donegal, Belfast, Dublin, Dundalk, Newry, a little bit of Wales, so we had a lot of stuff to cover. So that's where the storyboards became so crucial for the big stuff, so that everyone knew what they were doing, especially, for example, like the motorway scene, like where we shut down the 2 roads of traffic. We have stunt cars, but then we have practical cars, and then we have body doubles. And so there was a lot of precision that needed to be done there.
I know, Cathy, you are busy. So, I mean, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but how does it feel like? I mean, I've described this in the past as like an Irish new wave of filmmakers that are coming through with exciting stories to tell. I mean, and I hate then bringing it into it, but then from a female filmmaker's point of view, how does it feel to be right at the crest of this, as I called it, this Irish new wave of filmmakers, and seeing the industry both north and south of the border just seemingly flourish and be full with so many new storytellers emerging onto not just the local scene but the global scene as well?
I think it's incredibly exciting, and in many ways it's, I'm grateful for other people who've gone ahead for us, because their path was even harder for them to carve out, and it has become easier in the last few years. And I think especially with female talent, there's a lot more of an eye on, are we supporting the right talent, and how are people falling through the gaps, if they're not getting the opportunities. Is it to do with a lack of training, or is it just to do a lack of understanding how vital their stories are? And I think conversations are opening up, and I think there is a spotlight that's happening now, and I think it is so exciting because of Irish talent, there's such a variety in terms of the genre. And I think even how Wildfire was made, I hope that gives maybe another director or writer out there who maybe want to approach their film in a different way, the courage to go, if I believe in this process enough, okay, then go maybe try a short where it's slightly different, but prove it, and then go get your feature, and surround yourself with a team who will support that vision. Because I think it was a big part of the producers that were more experienced than me, who trusted, okay, you want to make this in a different way, let's do everything we can. And then it was, Screen Ireland were one of the first to come on and go, okay, so you need to workshop it. Okay, well then let's figure out how to do that. Let's figure out a different approach. And so that has been very exciting. And I guess as the more big major productions come through Northern Ireland or Ireland, I think what we can see sometimes is below the line talent is rising up very quick because they have opportunities to train. It's harder with directors and writers, because unless you're doing it, you're not learning. You know what I mean? But it's very difficult. So say, for example, like, how would an emerging director get those opportunities, whereas the below the line might get into a smaller position, rise up, and there isn't those opportunities for directors, because if they're not directing, then they're not directing. They can shadow, they can fall into different departments, but it's actually the making, the directing, where they gain the space. So I think this is where having the budget to do a proper debut is important. And I took time to do my debut. Like I'd done a lot of TV beforehand, and I didn't want to do the micro budget scheme, because I knew I wanted to do something of a certain standard, and that does require money. It does require schedule and time to do it properly. So I think as things open up, it's more opportunities for young writers and directors to make things, and then hopefully they will get the breakthrough to make the next bigger thing. And if not, what's happening there, is it to do with our training? Like, for example, I went away, unfortunately, to do my master's, because there wasn't the training of that standard available to me in Ireland or Northern Ireland.
Well, interesting stuff, Cathy. I mean, definitely an inspiring story to tell, and definitely kind of your words there definitely would be inspiring to any filmmaker watching or listening to this. So, Cathy Brady, thank you so much for your time. The film is out on the 3rd of September, and seek out Wildfire in your local cinema. Cathy Brady, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's my interview with Cathy Brady, and as I said at the start of that interview, the film's out in cinemas now, and it's definitely worthwhile checking out if you want to see if you want to support local talent, if you want to see locally produced features that are dealing with interesting things, then Wildfire is definitely the film for you. But we're going to move on to something completely different. The first Banterflix outing, I think, possibly in at least a year and a bit, definitely before the pandemic. I can't think of, no, it wasn't all of us. The three of us, we didn't just meet remotely like we have been the last couple of recordings. We actually went to the cinema. We went to the Odeon in Belfast. Other cinemas are available, of course. And we went to see the new Candyman. So, Victoria, Joe, I know you've been to the cinema a couple of times. Victoria, have you been back to the cinema since the pandemic? Was this a return trip for you?
I was actually trying to think when the last time I was in the cinema, because in my head I thought it was Tenant, but it must have been the GFT at Christmas, which is really sad. But it means the last film I saw was It's a Wonderful Life, so I can't really complain.
That's not a thing. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, everybody has to watch It's a Wonderful Life. I've said it many times before. Just prescribe it on prescription in around Christmas time. If you're suffering from the blues, just go, there, sir. There's your copy of It's a Wonderful Life. And maybe while you're at it, why don't you watch A Matter of Life and Death as well? There we go. There'll be some films that'll cheer you up. Oh, and you maybe need something else. There's the Naked Gun movies, just to throw you in for good measure. You'll be fine by January. Joe, I know you've been to the cinema a couple of times. You're like me, you've been going quite regularly. I'll maybe let you go, Victoria, before we play a clip. Do you want to set up a little bit of this new Candyman, give our listeners a bit of setup to what this is all about?
So Candyman, the 2021 release, it's not so much a remake as it is a spiritual sequel. It follows emerging artist Anthony, who is kind of discovering and reevaluating the urban legend of Candyman through art.
Okay, so that's perfectly set up. Let's play a clip of the film.
For me, Candyman was a guy named Sherman Fields. He had a hook for a hand. Neighborhood character used to stand out there and hand out sweets to us when I was a kid. One October, a razor blade shows up in a little white girl's Halloween candy. And one day, I saw myself. He'd been hiding in the walls. That's when I saw the true face of fear. Killed him right there on the spot. What shows up a couple weeks later? More razor blades and more candy. That's when we knew Sherman had been innocent, harmless.
So that's a clip of Candyman, directed by Nia DaCosta. The film's out in cinemas now. So this kind of spiritual sequel, loose spin-off, and I think this is something that we'll maybe kind of discuss kind of to an extent, because I know they've kind of said it kind of takes the Candyman story and tries to do something with it. Another version, some people might call this another one of those legend sequels that's going back to the original film and ignoring a lot of the events of the sequels. There's Candyman 2 and Candyman 3, although this one doesn't really do that too much, but we'll come back to that. We're going to be talking about the film. We've all seen this, as we already alluded to. And Joe, I know you've been very worried about how we're going to pronounce the film's leading man's name, just to make sure we get it correct. So we have found this lovely little useful tool on YouTube just to help us.
We are looking at how to pronounce the name of American actor and architect who is best known for portraying David Kane, Black Manta, in the DC Extended Universe superhero film Aquaman. How do you go about pronouncing his name? Yahya Abdul Mateen. Yahya Abdul Mateen.
So that's the clip. Joe, do you want to tell us a little bit about the film?
Well, for me, the film is a bit of a mixed bag. There's a lot of good things about it, and there's a lot of bad things about it. Well, when I say bad, that's maybe not fair. It's maybe just sort of things that could have been done better. First and foremost, in terms of the positives, it is a very beautiful film to look at. Like Victoria was saying, the leading character of Anthony McCoy, he is an artist, so it is very smart by Nia DaCosta to have that sort of artistic edge in her, the visual style that she implements in the film, and it's prevalent throughout the whole thing, and it works. It works really well at just being inviting and striking at times. I really like the ideas that it explores in terms of, taking, the racial tensions within America and, bringing them into the modern day. But then again, it does sort of address how it's still an ongoing issue. Like, it goes through the history of Candyman himself and how he is this folklore character who's been reimagined from generation to generation to generation, right up to the modern day. And another thing that I didn't really touch upon when we first left is that I like that sort of critical look it has in the art community itself, and how a lot of them are just a bunch of pompous, stuck up so-and-sos, but kind of reminded me a bit of Velvet Buzzsaw. I know a lot of people don't like that film, but I like that aspect of it. I like the sort of black comedy within that, and that there's sort of elements of that within this. But yeah, back to the performances. Your guy Yahya Abdul Mateen II. He was, I'm already aware of some of his work anyway. Like he's an Aquaman, but he was excellent in Watchmen. It was Dr. Manhattan and that. But in this film, I thought he was quite good. There's sort of a body horror element, and it sort of comes to the fore, and there's this a real psychological element to his performance as he becomes really, really obsessed and engrossed in this myth of Candyman and the folklore around it. And it literally starts to manifest in like a rotten sore in his hand that has come about from a bee sting, and how he comes to see Candyman when other people can't and stuff like that there. And it all comes to a head in the end, but we're obviously not going to get in it because we don't want to get in spoilers. But in terms of the sort of negative aspects, then I think it tries to put too many ideas into it, and in a way it becomes overburned by putting too much stuff in at the same time, rather than taking sort of the main meat of it and just going with it as it was. But the fundamental error of it, I think, is, as a horror film, I don't think it's scary enough. Like, there wasn't one moment at all throughout the whole film where I was like, oh, or, jolting or scared or anything like that there. And it bugged me in a way, because it was like, even the original, with its sort of gothic horror sort of element to things, it still made me, jump and jolt at times. But this here one, I was just kind of going, well, there's nothing really happening. Like, there's certain set pieces as well where it sets up something, you're like, okay, it's going to happen now. And it doesn't really deliver by the end of those. So in terms of, the negative aspects, that's sort of just dampened it a wee bit. But as a whole, I do like it, but I don't love it.
I think you're more enthusiastic about it than I am. And then when I feel like I'm going to be down in a film, it's a bit like Ghostbusters 2016 all over again, where, well, I'm very aware that I'm a white middle-aged viewer watching it, and this is dealing with a lot of racial issues, and it's coming from a much more organic place than even the original. Like, let's not forget, it's directed Candyman 1982. It's directed by a white man, and it's based on a story by English writer Clive Barker. And I mean, I do want to come back and talk about the original Candyman. I know you've mentioned it there, Joe. I like the original Candyman. I don't love it. It was something I came to late in kind of getting into horror. But I think I remember being at school, everyone kind of talking about Candyman, etc. Don't worry, I'm not going to say it 5 because I'm not foolish. But I never loved it, and it was a film when I watched it when I was younger, I didn't quite like it. As I watch it now, as an older, supposed more mature person, I like it a lot more. Things you've mentioned, I love the set design, I love the score, I love kind of how it looks at things, and I want to come back to even comparing and contrasting how the film shot. Like, the opening shots of Candyman is kind of, we have the kind of landscapes of Chicago, and it's kind of, we're looking in, and you get this idea of, isn't it Virginia Madsen? I can't remember the name of the actress.
Yeah, it's
name.
Helen.
Yeah, as Helen, she's the white woman who's going into the projects, into the ghetto area to investigate these urban legends. So she's kind of the person coming out from inside, and then we see in Candyman, that's this new version, Nia DaCosta's, where that's inverted, and we see like the opening shots. It's like the reverse. It's kind of from looking upwards, so it's kind of like you get this sense that they're trying to give the idea this is our story, and you get that, and I appreciate that. My problem with it is, and I'm going to be very careful how I word this, and it probably is that certain sense of ignorance on my behalf, so feel free to kind of tweet in and mention, my ignorance, and they do not represent the views of Victoria and Joe. But my problem with the film is this: in wrapping itself round the Black Lives Matter campaign and kind of using a lot of the modern day horrors that we've seen, and we're all too recent, we've seen these kind of recent, this is issues that are still going on in America. I just think it loses itself. I think it becomes burdened by that sense of responsibility, if that makes sense in a way. I think it loses its, in trying to tell the story, or trying to tell a Candyman story, it kind of brings all the Black Lives Matter and all the racial injustices, and I think that just clambers it all down. And it's the film. This is why I think the film at times doesn't work, because they keep feeling the need to remind us as viewers. We talk about the gentrification of the ghettos. You mean that's mentioned so many times, and I get it. I do get it, but it's the fact you keep telling me. It's like you're hitting me over the head with it. I get that what you're trying to go with the subtext. The most shocking aspect of this film, there's two bits that I wasn't scared, just in what Joe said. I just wasn't scared at all in this film. I find it really frustrating because it sets up interesting set pieces and then tries to do something interesting with it, and I don't think it works. But the sequence near the end of the film, that probably is kind of, for many viewers, is probably going to be particularly viewers from the black community are going to find the most shocking, horrific moments in this film near the film's closing stages, and it involves a police officer. And we've seen Jordan Peele do that before in Get Out. That's the moment that shocked me. That's the moment that got me. And then there's moments in the actual closing credits, we see the use of shadow puppetry, which is used quite a lot in this film. And that worked for me. I just think, and I'm just maybe too self-conscious to expand upon it further, and maybe through chatting I'll maybe open up a bit more. I felt that in trying to connect the Candyman story to the modern day injustice, I have no issue with them doing that at all. I've no problem. It's not me kind of saying, oh, they're trying to make Candyman woke. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that in trying to do that, I think I don't want to say diluted the horror. I think they've tried to make the horror too real, and it just didn't work for me. I wanted that little bit of escapism, but then I come back to the point I said at the start. I'm nearly 40. I'm a white middle class, supposed adult. I'm probably not the target audience. What the filmmakers tried, I probably am, actually, let's be honest. I probably am the target audience that they're trying to reach out and showcase. But I don't know. I don't think it's a bad film from a technical point of view. Those are all the things I admire about it. I just think from a storytelling point of view, I think it's very muddled, and I think it's just too burdened by what it's trying to do when it should be trying to scare us. Because Candyman it's a scary film. The 1992 film is a scary film. I know I've already said I'm not a massive fan of it. I like it, but it has scary moments. But that's enough of me rambling and feeling like I'm digging my own grave. Victoria, what about you? What do you think of the film?
Okay, well, I apologize in advance because this is probably going to be very rambly, but I actually completely disagree with you, Jim. I think the storytelling aspect of it actually made it stronger for me. So just by going what Joe was saying, technically it is an absolutely gorgeous film. Like, I can't wait to see what Nia DaCosta does in the future, because she has such a keen eye for framing and the color of the shots. Like, her cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. But again, in terms of storytelling, I think with the first Candyman, I remember I was looking at a couple of reviews. People said it was racist in its depiction, but it's gotten a lot more credit and appreciation as the years have gone on. I think this Candyman, there's a really important line because again, as Joe was saying, it's not just about Candyman, it's about the art world and what art is and can and should be. There's a line where one of the characters says about the Black community, which is, they love what we create, but they don't love us. And again, as three very white people watching this, we are never going to experience Candyman in the same way somebody from the Black community is. Or even if we were from the Black community and we were still in Northern Ireland, it's a very specifically American Black story. So like us three as white people aren't going to understand that. But I actually thought tying it into the Black Lives Matter movement, tying it into Black trauma and Black pain actually made it more powerful because, like, I'll not disagree with Joe and Jim. It's not scary in the sense of, like, it's not a slasher film. It's not a ghost story. There's no jump scares, I don't think, at all. And there's not really a sense of creepiness or like gothic horror that you get with the original. But I do think it's the perfect kind of genre for this kind of story because the pain that's on the screen is real, but it's also kind of scary in that there's the body horror and all that kind of stuff. One of the good things I think about it is they've tried to expand the myth of Candyman, so it's not just Tony Todd's original like Candyman on his own. He's not the main focus. There's a kind of storyline throughout the film that Candyman could be anybody. It could be any Black person that has died unjustly because they are Black. I loved that approach. And I think Sherman, I think his name was, I felt so sorry for him the whole way through the film. And I think what really elevated Candyman for me is bringing that Black pain into an area of horror. I think that makes it so much more powerful. And again, like Jim was saying, the gentrification thing's brought up constantly. But I think that was in part intended to ram it down white people's throats because Black people have to put up with that every fucking day of their lives and they're sick of it. It defines their existence, which Anthony tries to get across to that really awful art critic. And I think it's meant to annoy white people because we're like, oh, they're talking about this again. But how do we think Black people feel when their entire existence is defined by that? Like if them talking about the concept irritates us, imagine being in their shoes kind of thing. So actually, when Jim was saying about this paper silhouettes, which is, it's done very well because it's kind of childish or childlike, and it kind of harkens back to traditional cave painting. So there is a sense of universality to it. Like the Candyman story does continue throughout and it hasn't stopped. If you stay for the credits, it's worth watching because the paper silhouettes kind of continue and it takes some of the key moments of Black trauma and kind of shows you that Candyman could be anybody because this has actually happened. There's a reference to, I think his name was George, it's either George Stinley or George Stanley. He was the youngest person ever to be executed by the electric chair and he was a little Black kid who was innocent. And it's Candyman for me, like this wouldn't be in my top 5, but the original is in my top 3 horror films, but it's because it shows how horror can be elevated by bringing pain to the forefront, like emotional pain to the forefront of the story. Sorry, that was very rambly, but I've been thinking about this all day.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying at all, Victoria. I guess it's the fact that for me, and again, I'm probably feeling too self-conscious in saying this, I just think that by using the Black Lives Matter, I have no problem with it. I just think how it's executed, is a little bit clunky and expositional heavy. And I think you look at what Jordan Peele did in comparison with Get Out. And Get Out is a film that is able to find that balance between creeping me out, unsettling me, challenging me as a white viewer, and challenges me with my own, probably, there's no way of denying it, prejudices. Like the final sequence, the finale of Get Out is the moment, the genius of Jordan Peele as a screenwriter, is when you realize exactly what you've been, and he's come so close to putting us into the day-to-day lives of members of the black community. That's why I think Get Out is a masterpiece and an Oscar-winning film, and it's fucking fantastic. I just think, I don't know whether it's because I know Jordan Peele's involved here. I think there's 3 screenwriters involved here. I don't know if there's coming with 3 different ideas on what they want to do and how they want to showcase it and how they want to then incorporate the Candyman myth into that, if that makes sense. I mean, I love the fact that the film takes this idea that, as Victoria alluded to, anybody can be the Candyman, a member of the black community who's died as a result of racial injustice. You know, it's perfect. I love that idea. I just don't think it's executed as well as it should be. And I come back to that point I made in comparison with Get Out. And even Us, whilst they didn't scare me, and I remember talking to Leo McGuigan after a screening of Us, which I loved. I loved Us. I thought it was such a, again, not a perfect film, but I love what it did, and I love what Jordan Peele tried to do with that film. And we came back and said, do you need to be scared to have enjoyed a horror film? And I kind of said, I don't need to be scared, but I need to at least be unsettled. And I'm just being honest, this film didn't unsettle me. I think all too often, maybe not Nia DaCosta, possibly the DOP, they're trying to do something different. Like there's a sequence you mentioned, and I don't want to go too spoilerific. There's a sequence where Anthony goes to visit the film critic, or the art critic, sorry, that I think you mentioned, Victoria. And there's a sequence where stuff starts to go down and the camera decides to pull a way out. And I just find it frustrating because I never find a sense of dread. The one time I think the film finds that balance of creepiness and style, there's a sequence, but it's in the trailer. It's in the trailer. And that's another thing I have a problem with this film. A lot is in the trailer. Too much is in the trailer. And it tries to paint the picture of being one type of film when it's not. And I mean, I've talked about that in the past, about marketing men and women. They'll sell their soul to get your bum on the cinema ticket, to get your bum on the cinema seat. And again, I think an awful lot's in the trailer. There's a sequence involving a mirror, and it's the same sequence with Anthony when he visits the art critic's house. And I think it's done really, really well. And it's dealing with that idea of the legacy of the first film. Well, I mean, we as viewers, well, most of us as viewers, if we've watched the original Candyman, we know who Anthony is. We kind of know who that character is. You know, if you've seen the film or you've watched it before you decide to watch this film, you're going to know who that character is. I think it does just enough. I would have liked to have seen a bit more Vanessa Williams, if I'm honest, other than just a little cameo appearance. But I don't know, Joe, weigh in. I mean, I don't know if Victoria and I are going to end up in fisticuffs here, but I don't think we're actually disagreeing. I think we like the same thing. I think we're all, I mean, even Joe, I think we all like the same things about the film. I just came out of it, if I'm honest, disappointed. And the more I think about it, it's not that I don't like it, it's that disappointment has grown, if that makes sense. And it's not that I wanted to be scared. I did want to be scared. And it's not that I want blood and gore. I'm not that much of a fucking blood and guts fanatic. I'm not. I mean, blood and gore doesn't scare me unless it's done like in something like Green Room, something like that, where it's nasty and it's visceral and real. But I don't know. This film just... I talked about this on stage when we were talking about censor. I love a horror film that just gets under your skin and buries itself there and stays there for days and you think about it. You've clearly had that, Victoria, with this film. I mean, I haven't. I probably need to go see it again, maybe take my expectations away. You mentioned it, Joe. There's stuff I love about that Cronenberg sense, like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, of somebody who's been kind of corrupted from within. I would maybe like to have seen more of that. You mentioned Velvet Buzzsaw. I mean, I just love that film just for Jake Gyllenhaal. Just for Jake Gyllenhaal's performance alone. What's not to like about it? But I don't know. I just think, when it comes to that thing, this is going to be a film that critics will laud for what it's trying to do. and your average, and I'm saying that, and I'm not trying to be condescending, your average horror-loving punter, and I know a couple of people, Jim McMorrow messaged me and said he didn't like it at all, and he very much agrees with me in the sense that it's too bogged down with what it's trying to do to tell it gets bogged down, and if I can, as I say, it gets bogged down by the Black Lives Matter issues and the subtext that it brings, and it's not that I have an issue with that. I just think that shackles the film in what it's trying to do, and I know that is a very insensitive thing I just said, but that's the only way I can put it. Joe, want to pick up on anything we've been talking about?
Well, that's the thing as well, with the sort of Black Lives Matter perspective on the film. It should have been sort of the skeletal structure in which you put everything on top of. You put the aspects of body horror, you have the genuine tension and horror and everything like that there, but that's the meat that you put onto these bones. But what the film actually does, the Black Lives Matter perspective, it's the skeleton, it's the bones, it's the skin, it's almost everything. So then by the time you're trying to add those other aspects, that's when things become overburdened and oversaturated, and you don't know, you're sort of torn between which aspects to focus on and which not to. I'm not saying for a second, you should throw that, aspect of things out the window and more or less do a straight remake of the original and just make it a gothic horror set in Chicago. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, use that as your starting point, but don't make it your be all and end all. Don't make it your main, just don't make it the absolute focus of every single aspect of the film. You need to have to, sort of need to realize that, the horror has to be there. Like you said, it has to get in under your skin and it has to scratch. But this is, at the same time, that's something coming from a white fella. Like, I would love to hear, a black person's perspective in this film, because it can be a complete 180 from what I'm saying. And I said, oh, this film touched me because it does that. And it does this, that, and the other. Like, just taking, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but even the ending as an example, one of the main issues people, critics had with the original and how they thought it was sort of racist. I actually went back and watched the segment of Horror Noir where they talk about Candyman, and they sorry, I'm just sort of looking at my notes to try and remember exactly what they say. Their main criticism was how in that film he tortures lower class black people, when across the river as such, there's the upper class white people, and they're kind of going, well, why is this black figure, who's supposed to be a vengeful sort of figure for black people, given how he symbolizes the trauma and everything that their community's gone through? Why is he targeting them rather than the actual targets, the descendants of the people who put him in the situation he was in? Whereas this film, it kind of does do that more. It does take those criticisms and it goes with it, which is good to see. But I do understand both your perspectives going into perspectives on the main themes of the film, and that's why I'm sort of in the middle, not to be sort of playing it safe as it was, but that's why I sort of am in the middle. It's very important that it's there, but it shouldn't be the be all and end all, because you lose the fundamentals of what makes a horror film great.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from. The only other thing I do want to say, and I haven't got round to saying it, I think we've mentioned a few of the performers, but Tiona Paris, I just think she's fucking amazing. I love her as a performer. I think I first seen her, was it in Spike Lee's Chirac? I mean, I don't love Chirac, but I love what he tried to do with that film. And I think she's in Marvel, isn't she? Bringing it back to Marvel. I think she's in there, and I think she was in Dear White People.
She was in WandaVision. I think she was the agent, wasn't she?
Yeah, I think she is.
I think so.
Yeah, she's great. And another thing I love, I mean, this is kind of where I thought the film was going to go. And again, that's me coming to my preconceptions. This idea of that places, that I really like, in exploring a history of trauma, not just in places, but in people. Because there's a whole kind of thing, this is where I don't know where the film's been maybe edited and kind of been tweaked around in post, but there's stuff with Tiona Paris' character, her father. And it's kind of, there's stuff about him, and it's never really revealed, it's hinted at. There's enough there that you can put 2 and 2 together and you can get 4, but I guess you could also get 5. You know, that's the thing. It's the fact that people are coming in this film. People in this film, they come from a place of trauma. That trauma is real. That trauma is visceral. And I liked all that element. I really did. And I'm not trying to backpedal here. I did like those elements of the film. It's just that I just think the screenplay, I come back to it, I think the screenplay is just a little bit clunky. And it does that thing, as I've already alluded to, all too often. It is just kind of banging you on the head and saying, you know, come on, keep up, come on, this is what we're talking about, and these are the issues that we want to talk about. And it's not that I have an issue in any way with those issues. I'm very much interested in them, but I just think a good screenplay, I come back to Chris Nolan. Okay, let's go from, you know, white guy goes back to white filmmaker and talks about that. But I look at what Chris Nolan does as a screenwriter, and Chris Nolan basically says, from a writing point of view, you're going to keep up. It's up to you. You have to pay attention. If you don't understand it, just sit there, shut up, and just watch it. Just watch the plane crash. Just watch Leo do his thing in Inception. If you then want afterwards, go back and you might want to go watch it again. You might go, what the fuck was that all about? This film, too often for me, just feels like it slows down and kind of says, right, okay, now keep up. This is what we're talking about. These are the issues. Let's move on again. And I think had it been handled a little bit more slicker, dare I say it, like in Get Out, like they're kind of dealing with it in Us, I just think I would have had a much more engaging experience. But I just come back to that point. I just wasn't scared. And I just wasn't scared. I wasn't unsettled. And it's not too much of a spoiler. People have talked about it. I can get why there's a Tony Todd cameo of sorts in this film. There is a Tony. I want to talk about it. I will talk around it as much as I can. I just felt we didn't need it. I just felt we didn't. And I think it. If I really think about it, if one kind of things what we're talking about, what happens to Anthony, I get that his story is connected to Candyman and from the 92 film, but I think it kind of diminishes his story and what they then do with Candyman by bringing back Tony Todd, if that makes sense, without going too spoilerific.
Yeah, I feel like the Tony Todd cameo was just kind of tacked on for fans' sake. I don't think it added anything. If anything, it probably, like you said, took away from Anthony's story, which was disappointing. Because again, I went into the film expecting to see him at some point. Because when you first see Candyman, as he is at the start of the film, you're kind of looking at it expecting it to be Tony Todd, and when it's not, you're like, oh, okay. And then you're waiting the whole film for him to come up.
Yeah, because we Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was like, well, I don't know about you, but I was very giddy to see him. Because I know I'm just such a huge fan of him in that portrayal of the character. Just when you hear that sort of, booming sort of musical voice, I just like, it's him. But then at the same time, when you actually sit reflecting it, you're like, oh yeah, you didn't really need him, did you?
Yeah, they wanted that reaction from you.
Yeah, they got it.
They got it.
I got my cheap thrill from it.
Oh. I just think what this film tries to do in a way, it's kind of like Friday the 13th have done it, Nightmare on Elm Street have kind of to a really lesser extent have kind of dabbled with it. And, well, there was Halloween 3, but no one apart from me. Maybe Joe really loves Halloween 3. Well, people do. People do love Halloween 3. It just gets me in the mood to kind of get ready to kind of start watching it again close to the hallowed season. Halloween season.
Halloween.
No, don't sing it. I'll be on it. But when they try to do what you expect from a franchise and a series, who you expect the protagonist is going to be. I mean, I fucking love what they're trying to do in that sense of, I know I'm sounding like I'm backpedaling and I'm being a bit of a kind of arse, but I like that they are trying to connect. I genuinely do like they're trying to connect the two. I like the fact that they're trying to, claim ownership of this character, because I can't think, off the top of my head, Tony Todd's Candyman, he's probably the one iconic black kind of villain of that. He's up there with, you know, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees. He's up there. Joe, maybe you can think of one off the top of your head. He's an iconic. He's an iconic horror creation, and thankfully, unlike many of those other characters that we've seen that I mentioned, he's entered into pop culture, but he's entered into pop culture in a very different way, and it makes sense then to have his character connected to all this modern real world violence that is not ancient history for people living in the places like is it Cabri Green? I can never say it. I can never remember it. Cabrini Green. Those are real world horrors for those people that they probably kind of have to live through, and what we see happening and unfolding within this film. I just come back to that point, and I know I could just repeat it. I just think it's very clunky in how it's doing it. It looks beautiful. It looks stylish. It's too beautiful almost for its own good. It's too stylish. Although I love that. I mean, one thing I just love, I thought was really clever right from the get-go, is that sense of the parallels and the opposites from how the opening sequence of the first Candyman, from the kind of, when you think of like the white savior, the white woman going into these projects, her own naivety, kind of exploring these things. And then we have in this film, it's very much our story told from our point of view. All things I commend it, but the film itself is overcooked. I maybe need to watch this film again. I'm not a massive fan of it, and it has now got me worried that I won't like Halloween Kills, but then I didn't like Halloween when it was out a couple of years ago either. I'm just getting old and grumpy. Just horror movies were good in the 80s with all their casual racism and nothing but white cast. Just if I'm gonna go full annoy everybody, I may as well go annoy it. But those were the days, he says mockingly, he says jokingly. Anybody want to say anything else? Because I'm trying to think. I will check social media because I think we did put a shout out, and I don't know if we have had much feedback. I'm going to check now, but just while I'm doing that, anybody want to share any other thoughts on Candyman, or even kind of anything we haven't even mentioned really about Candyman from '92?
Nothing really. Like I do like their approach to sort of acknowledging the first one, and how Helen's story is, like you say, is told from the black perspective, but it's true to what the first film is to a point, and then it twists it where she's the villain rather than Candyman, but then that gets cleared up later on. I do like that, and I know I didn't mention, but the shadow puppet stuff, that for me was the best stuff. I told you both leaving, I was like, I can near enough watch a whole film that was that was like that in a sense. Even if it was a silent film, just with that music, because the music in the end, it touches upon that film class score, the Cabrini Green theme, and it's fantastic, their sort of rendition of it. So if there was a whole film like that, I could just sit and watch it.
Speaking of the 92 one, I was actually talking to friend of the podcast, James Oliver, and if I remember his message correctly, him, his girlfriend, and a couple of their friends went together. He'd obviously been a massive horror fan, had seen the original, but his friends hadn't. I do think people who have seen the original will appreciate this more, because you'll see like certain callbacks. You'll obviously understand more of the Candyman myth. You'll understand how important Helen is and Anthony as like the baby. I think the film, it's okay in isolation, but I do think you'd appreciate it more having seen the first one.
Yeah, I would agree. And I know I mentioned this earlier on when we were talking briefly, it's a legend sequel that doesn't really do away with Candyman 2 or 3. Those films are flawed. They're not amazing. 3's pretty terrible. Candyman 2, I've rewatched because Joe and I were talking about it, kind of saying that he had rewatched Candyman 2 in the run-up to watching the new film. And last night, after watching Vigil, which I quite liked on BBC One last night, I watched Candyman 2 late last night, and it's not great. It's not on a par with the first one at all, but it has its moments. It's a standard sequel bait. It does what it needs to do. It's a Ron Steele movie. It does what it needs to do. But no one really cares about Candyman 3. I don't even think most of the people involved with Candyman 3 don't even care about being involved in Candyman 3. But look, I guess I guess I'm the most negative ninny here of the three of us talking about the film, and it definitely comes across that sense from, we've got a couple, Adam Neeson, who's been on the TV show, he's been on this pod before. He thought Candyman was incredible, chilling and terrifying, all done without resorting to cheap jump scares. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't say it's terrifying though, Adam. But Michael Hare, who I think has commented a couple of times, he thought the new one was brilliant, heavy on mood and atmosphere with little resilience on jump scares. The score is fantastic. Even the set design and architecture was impressive. I think it might surpass the original. Michael's entitled to his opinion. He's wrong, but he's entitled to his opinion. It does not surpass the original. I think it cleans up all the problems with the first one. I don't mind a film using jump scares. A really good jump scare is really effective. Just ask anyone who's watching The Exorcist 3 for the first time about how to do a jump scare beautifully. Even Jaws, even last Spielberg, and how to do a really good jump scare. If you use it sparingly, a jump scare is good. I don't know. I come back to, yeah, you can. I'm just going to be in the minority, and I'm happy to be in the minority. I just don't like this film. I don't hate it for what it's trying to do. I just think it's a real disappointment for me. And I'm now worried, as I've mentioned, about Halloween Kills.
Well, I was just going to say I'm right down the middle with Candyman, just as a generalization. So it's a solid 3 out of 5, and I would say go to see it, especially if you love the original. And I know you don't like Halloween 2018. I know it has its flaws, but I really enjoyed it for what it was. And Halloween Kills looks kind of more the same, only pushing it to more extremes, which is why I'm kind of looking forward to it too.
My partner has never forgiven me for dragging him to Halloween, so that was not a good night.
Did you take him on his birthday?
No, don't start. There's something about horror, like you were saying, Joe, about how the skeletons and the meat maybe should have been swapped. I wouldn't consider Candyman to be a horror as we understand it. I would say it's more of a gothic story. One of the modules I did when I was in uni was literature and Victorian science. So it was how Victorians reacted to the science of the time. So psychology, criminology, all this new stuff that was happening. And the way my lecturer worded it was, horror and gothic are not so much a genre as they are a mode. So the metaphor she used was, if the body is the story, it's the genre. So if it's romance, sci-fi, folk, horror or gothic is the mode, and that's the cloak it wears. So that's how the story is told, as opposed to it being just the one thing. And I think that's what this Candyman is. I do think it is a story of Black trauma, Black pain, Black Lives Matter, very, very contemporary in that way, which I think kind of dates it a little, which is disappointing. But I think kind of lost my train of thought now.
Well, the only thing I would say, I don't think it dates it. I don't think it dates it because, as we've all kind of mentioned, stuff that this film is dealing with is still happening. We've seen it on our TV screens. We've seen how the Black Lives Matter has been revitalized with the death of George Floyd. We've seen how that's been rejuvenated and come back to prominence. So I wouldn't say it dates it, although probably to an extent we've got to look at the fact that how long has this film been delayed by?
Well over a year, I think.
Was it a year? Well over a year. You kind of think how on the money this film would have been had it been released on its original release date. We've had that with a couple of films. I was thinking actually when we reviewed on the TV show The Forever Purge, and kind of what it was dealing with. It was another film that was pushed back. And you think kind of in the wake of kind of pre what happened at Capitol Hill in America, how kind of sensationalist all that would have been. And you kind of see, I don't know if you've seen The Forever Purge and kind of what it's trying to do and kind of expand and everything and trying it as best it can. I do think the Purge series has maybe run its course, but of course it hasn't. They'll do another one. Of course, I think there is another one already greenlit. But I think maybe that year-long delay or however long it's been delayed has probably kind of dated it, but it's not dated. All the kind of themes that it deals with will be relevant. And the sad thing is Victoria will probably go into 2022. They'll just be as relevant 2023. They'll just be as relevant and so on. You know, I come back to I have no issues at all with this film and what it's trying to, and it's I've no issues with what the film's trying to do and how it's trying to use the Candyman mythology to bring that to a mainstream audience, a different type of audience that wouldn't want to go see that type of film. But I just think it's how it's executed. I know I'm repeating myself, but if that's given you enough time to kind of gather your thoughts. But I would, and just what you're saying, and also in kind of relation to horror, I do agree, mate. It's more than a genre. It's a cloak. You can do a lot of things within the horror, and it's kind of the idea of the Dark Hedges Film Festival. That's why I love horror, because horror is not just women in a forest, busty women in a forest running in the dark from a guy with a chainsaw. You know, it's more than that, and you can do a lot of subversive things within the horror genre. I come back to Get Out, and look what it did, and what it tried to do, but it's just slicker, and even Us as well is just slicker than this, and it's surprising then that Jordan Peele's involved with this. But then I maybe look at what Jordan Peele did with The Twilight Zone. I think there's some good episodes. There's nothing amazing. I think I like the idea of it more. And what's Jordan Peele's new film? Is it I'm Out, or what is it?
I think it's just called like
something like that. Yeah,
it's like Them or something, like the
or is it called Nope? Is that what it is?
Nope. No, or Nope or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
The thing was just like a cloud or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Jordan Peele as a filmmaker. I really do. He's an interesting voice, and I love what he's trying to say. His approach is kind of like, give me a film. If I read a film, and if it's got a white central character, he's like, yeah, I've seen this. I'm going to do something different. And I get that. I totally get that, and I have no issues with that. I just think the execution here is poor, and I don't know. There's a couple of screenwriters involved. I just don't know if there's been too many ideas, too many cooks spoil the broth. But hopefully that's giving you enough time with my rambling and letting people get annoyed with me again. Hopefully, Victoria, that's giving you enough time to gather your thoughts.
I'm just thinking, like, in terms of, like you said about the clunkiness, I do agree. I was listening to the Evolution of Horrors podcast, and they kind of mentioned that the film is too compact. Like, it probably could have benefited from being maybe an extra 20 minutes, half an hour long. What do you think?
I felt it was long enough as it was. I thought it was 2 hours, and then realized afterwards it was only an hour and a half. So the pacing was maybe just an issue with me as well.
Mm-hmm. Like, even I love the film, but the pacing did feel very up and down. It wasn't like a rising build at all. It was very like up and down, which kind of took me out of it a wee bit. And like what Jim was saying, when it gets to these serious conversations, like with Anthony and the Art Critic, it does kind of hit you over the face a wee bit, because you're like, oh, we're at this bit now, and then it switches gears again. So maybe it was just a case of too many cooks.
I guess we're all kind of, which has probably made it in a more interesting pod, in the fact we aren't all in agreement. We don't all love it. We don't all hate it. I don't hate it. I'm probably just the most negative voice about it. I'm just going to call it out. I just think, as I keep saying, you know, like, I'm hitting it. I'm more than the fucking screenwriters in this film. I'm kind of hitting that point across, you know, so I just think it's poorly written. It's not that it's poorly written. I just think it probably, the screenplay needed another go. And either fine tuning to kind of see, and possibly that short run time is the result of an edit. It does mean there's stuff, like, I will say this in relation to what you said, Victoria, and come back to things I mentioned. There's characters and there's backstories and there's things that are hinted at that are never expanded upon, that you would like to see expanded upon. There's characters, as I've mentioned, I would have liked to have seen more of, and to get an idea, more clear idea of their motivation and what they're trying to do. So possibly the runtime, it's been lost in the edit. We don't know, because we don't have the cast or crew or producer to speak to. This is all just conjecture on our stage. But yeah, I mean, I think we should probably bring the podcast to a close. Look, as flawed as it is, I still think give it a watch. It kind of comes back to what we've said before in articles rather than podcasts on the website, maybe on the TV show. Watch the film, whether you like it or not. and whether I still think it's banging you on the head with some of the subtext that it's going on about. And I know that's probably, I've already said that, and Victoria's mentioned it. It's probably doing that knowingly, because why not? I mean, why not? I mean, we've had to deal with this for so long, but if it opens your eyes to these issues, that's probably a good thing. If it challenges you and makes you think why you didn't like this, or challenge you to think about things differently, that's a good thing. That's a good thing in every sense. But whilst I'm down in the film, I still think kind of come away from the film if you want to find out more about some of the things that the film is dealing with. I'm not quite certain. I think they have a list. There's a mention about at the very end of the at the end of the credits, if you want to know more. I think there's a Candyman website. And I know I can't remember the name of the address. I did check it out. It does give you access to a lot of articles and showcasing a lot of things it deals with. So, yeah, whilst I think the film's flawed, again, if it's a way to get people to open up and be challenged and learn about these things, that's a good thing. I don't really know where to go from that, but, you know, I think that's...
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interject. I was going to say another good thing, which I just read today, that the film itself is the first #1 film at the US box office to be directed by a black woman. So there's another reason to celebrate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no matter, you know, what you really think of the film in general, that's something definitely to celebrate.
Yeah. So we've talked about Candyman. We've spoken to Cathy Brady for a film Wildfire, and we've talked a bit about Spider-Man No Way Home. So we've packed a lot into this podcast, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed what you've listened to, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasting fix. Check out the website. There's loads of content there. Check out the Patreon page, where you'll get Patreon exclusive episodes of the podcast, episodes that you'll get to listen to long before anyone gets to listen to it on the normal RSS feed, and watch the TV show, and just generally, if you see us in the street, say hello. That's the way to work it. It means I know someone's listening somewhere. Say hello to Victoria, say hello to Joe, don't mention his foot, and just kind of, I don't know, just have a laugh and just be polite and say hello, and you can call out to me and go, you're the guy that doesn't like Candyman. And I say, yeah, that's me, let's talk about it. But anyway, so moving on, let's wrap things up. So thank you very much, Victoria.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Jim.
And we'll be back next week. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another podcast. But for now, until then, ta-ta.
This has been We Need to Talk About Movies. Thanks for listening. For more information, visit banterflix.com. See you next time.